This podcast is sponsored by Ramp. Are you the decision maker in your company? Consider this. For the first time in decades, there's a better option for a corporate card and spend management platform. Meet Ramp, the only corporate card and spend management system designed to help you spend less money so you can make more. Most corporate credit cards offer points as incentives, but those points amount to less than their worth in real cash value. Ramp's corporate cards offer you cash back, real money in your pocket. Plus, you control who spends what with each vendor. And Ramp's software collects and verifies receipts automatically, which means you'll stop wasteful spending and close your books in hours instead of days. Businesses that use Ramp add up to 5% to their bottom line the first year. If you're a decision maker, adding Ramp could be one of the best decisions you've ever made. And now get $250 when you join Ramp. Just go to ramp.com/easy. Ramp.com/easy. RAMP.com/easy.
Cards issued by Sutton Bank and Celtic Bank, members of FDIC. Terms and conditions apply.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Red, your lunchtime catch-up on all things Liverpool FC on a Tuesday on which we're just waiting for Saturday. But it's also your daily reminder that the Reds are top of the league, that the Reds are in a cup final, that the Reds are in the fifth round of the FA Cup, and sitting pretty, waiting to find out who will play in the last 16 of the Europa League. So all things considered, it's all going very well. We're also starting to get players back from injury. I suppose it's about time I talked about the fact that we got Thiago back, got a brief glimpse of him, and now he's injured again. He was always going to get injured again, having had such a long time out. Now, there was a couple of reports by some journalists suggesting that it might have been a season ender, which, you know, given we're in early February, would have been quite a serious injury to end his season. But Jurgen has said he doesn't think it's that bad. So fingers crossed we will get Thiago back again in a couple of weeks. What a shame. What a shame. And I do notice on This Is Anfield an article entitled Thiago Alcantara, one of the great lost Liverpool careers. And it's written by Aaron Cutler, and it's a really, really good piece. And it's just such a shame because this is one of the most talented players of the last 20 years. This is one of the best midfielders of the last 10 years. A guy who season after season was undeniably world class for Bayern Munich. And when he's been fit for us, has largely been really good. The issue is he hasn't been fit often enough. We were able to manage him quite well in the 21-22 season, mostly because Naby Keita also managed to stay fit in that year. And Jurgen was able to rotate them, so we always had one of them on the pitch. There was only a handful of games where we didn't have one or the other starting. And as it happens, those are the handful of games that we drop points in that cost us the title that year. Thiago was breathtaking at times in that season and has been in other seasons that he's been with us. Obviously, he arrived in 2020 at a weird time when COVID was rampant, when we had a season that began promisingly, and then Virgil gets injured. And then he gets injured himself in the derby, a horrendous tackle by Richarlison. he ends up missing a number of months. And by the time he comes back, we've been ravaged by injuries. We're forced to play Fabinho at centre-back. We're forced at times to play Jordan Henderson at centre-back. And Thiago was pressed into action as the defensive midfielder, a role that doesn't suit him. And he struggles. And there's no question he struggled. But once Jurgen made the decision to go to playing actual centre-backs at centre-back, a novel idea, and Fabinho could go back into midfield, and we played the midfield of Gini, Fabinho and Thiago, we went on that really good run at the end of the season that saw us clinch third. And he was really, really good in that run of games. And that midfield, that trio in midfield were great together. Then we get the 21-22 season, and he was sensational. He was absolutely sensational. Played 39 games in all competitions, and we went as close as anyone has come to winning the quadruple. And then last season, the midfield just fell apart. Henderson's legs were long gone. Fabinho's legs went. And Thiago was used in a manner that was just, it was what the team needed because nobody else could do it. But unfortunately, it had devastating effects on him. We basically had to use him like David Batty as a roaming ball winner because Henderson couldn't tackle a hot dinner and Fabinho couldn't move. And it broke Thiago. And he played only 18 games in the league, 28 in all competitions. And when he got hurt, that was season over. When he got hurt the second time, that was season over. And he's been out since April. But even at that, he's really been out since about February. And he came back against Arsenal after months and months and months, and rumours and conjecture and discourse around him talk that the hip injury is such that he was told in the summer that maybe he should consider retirement. And he worked his way back to the point of being ready to play. And now he's picked up this injury. And hopefully it's not the last we've seen of him for Liverpool. He's at 98 appearances for the Reds, which is probably more than some people would think. He played 30 in the first season, 39 in the second season, 28 last season, and 1 this year. And it's probably more than some people would think he has played for us. But it's just such a shame that it hasn't been more. Because what a player. Like, do you know how you know he's a great player? When you hear other players talk about him. And it's not fluff and bluster. It's not, meaningless catchphrases or, the standard kind of football lines. It's none of that stuff. It's about the awe in their voice when they talk about him. This little giddy laugh that they get. I always remember watching a video. I think it's Ox and Robbo. And I think it's they were doing FIFA cards. And they were being asked, who do you think is the highest this in the squad and that in the squad? And they were talking about a bunch of different players like Trent and Joe and Costa Simicas came up because he apparently had the highest pace in the team. And when they talked about Thiago, there was just this awe in their voices and this giddiness as they talked about him. And I always remember Ox just saying to whoever the fella was that was conducting the interview type thing, have you seen the fella play? And that just kind of said it all. This was a high-level professional footballer in his own right, in complete awe of a new teammate. Have you seen the fella play? And it's always stuck with me. And when people talk about other midfielders, whether they've played for us or other teams, they talk about the best midfielders in the league. And obviously there's some obvious ones that come up. And then people start to really stretch and reach for some names. And they overlook Thiago. And I always just think, have you seen the fella play? Have you seen what he's capable of? Have you seen the range of passing, the vision, the weight he puts on the ball, the flight of his pass as opposed to others? Like, we're used to seeing great passers at this football club. If you grew up in the 80s, you would have seen Ronnie Whelan, Jan Molby, obviously. Jan, one of the great passers in the history of the game. In the 90s, Jamie Redknapp was a fantastic passer of the ball. Obviously, John Barnes in his midfield run when he'd moved inside after the Achilles tear, a phenomenal passer, and Jan Molby was still around. Then we had Gary McAllister, obviously. Then Stevie started to flex his muscles and show what he was capable of. And then we got Alonso, and what a passer he was. But there's something special about watching Thiago caress a ball to wherever he wants it to go on the pitch. Watching him manipulate a team before playing a pass that you didn't even think was on. That lovely disguise pass he plays between the lines. The clipped, curling loft out to either fullback. The little balls into the feet of the forward players. Yeah, sure, you look at some of the passes from Alonso where it's, 60 yards, straight as a die, drops at the feet of a teammate. Phenomenal. You watch Gerrard drive a pass. Incredible. Trent, of course, might be the best long passer of them all. He might be a better long passer than Stevie or Xabi. You watch all of them pass, and then you watch Thiago pass. And as great as they are, it just feels like he's on a slightly different level. It's an awful shame for football, not just for us, but for football, that both he and his brother, who's also outrageously talented, have been plagued by injuries for much of their careers. Now, in Thiago's case, most of the blame must sit with Pep Guardiola, who continued to try and rush him back from an injury, which caused the same injury to reoccur 3 different times. And he's never really been able to be as resilient to injuries since. But you look at his time at Bayern, and he was, after the first 2 seasons, he plays 25 the first season, gets injured. Then the next season is the one where he kind of loses the year, but only plays 13 games because Pep keeps rushing him back. He gets hurt. Rush him back, gets hurt again. Rush him back, gets hurt again. Then we get to the summer. Comes back, plays 42, 41, then 32, then 42 and 40. So you look at them and you think, well, 40 games a season, I mean, that's not bad. But consider those are Bayern teams that are going late into the European Cup, late into the domestic cups. They're playing 55, 60 games a season there. And he's playing, 40, 42. And some of it is rest, it's load management. But a lot of it is niggles and knocks and things, because after the knee injury, he had to compensate for that. And it caused quite a few muscle problems. But there's no question that when he was at Bayern, he was the best controlling midfielder in the world. Like, a lot of people look at Toni Kroos and talk about how great he is, and undeniably he is a great player, but Toni Kroos isn't Thiago. He's not capable of doing the things Thiago can do. He's a super intelligent player, but he's not as good as Thiago. Now, you can make a case he's had a better career because he's won all them European Cups, but he's not as good a footballer as Thiago. But you look at what the guy's won in his career. 4 league titles with Barca. Admittedly, 2 of them he was a bit part squad player. 2 of them he did play a more kind of main role. Goes to Bayern, wins 7 league titles, 4 cups, a European Cup. He'd won a European Cup with Barca as well, but again, he was a squad player. I think he played once in the tournament when Barca won it in 2011, but he was the starring guy when Bayern won it. And he comes to us, and thus far, it's an FA Cup. I assume he has a League Cup medal, even though he didn't play in the final because he got injured in the warm-up. But it's just not enough. He deserves so much more. And I do hope that he gets back on the pitch and can play some part in the run-in. We've got 14 league games left. We've got 1 game left in the League Cup. We would have, I think, 4 games left in the FA Cup. The FA Cup. So that'll get us 19. And then there's, I believe, 7 potential games left in the Europa League. So we've got potentially 26 games left this year. And if he can get back and play in 10 of them, it could change things for us massively. It really could. Because he's the type that you can bring on to unlock a defence. And he's the type that you can bring on to see out a game, because his ability to just dictate play, control the ball, always pick the right option is just different class. So fingers crossed he does come back, because what a player. What an unbelievable player. Also on This Is Anfield, there's another piece entitled "His Development Has Been Enormous. Is Liverpool's Next Joel Matip Out on Loan?" And this piece is about Sepp Vandenberg, who's on loan at Mainz, who's having a good season surrounded by dross at Mainz. He's done really well on previous loans at Preston. The unfortunate thing for us is that Mainz, by all accounts, have an option to buy. Now, they're potentially getting relegated this year, so they might not be in a financial position to take up that option. Even if they are, I wonder, is there a way we can maybe buy them out of the option? Maybe we send them another player on loan for next year. Maybe someone like Luke Chambers could benefit from a year there, potentially playing in the second division in Germany, which did wonders for Nat Phillips earlier in his career. And maybe we could get Sepp back, because he's a tall, quick, aerially good, comfortable on the ball centre-back who I think would fit really well in the back three that Xabi Alonso or Ruben Amorim could bring to Liverpool. He's 6'4". He is lightning quick. He's good on the ball. He's dominant in the air. He's good 1v1. I do wonder if we could find a way to get him back, because when you look at our centre-back group, potentially in a back three, Ibu on the right is obvious. Virgil in the middle is obvious. Now, we need one on the left-hand side, and that's not him. But we'd also need good depth. Now, in a back three, you'd have to imagine Jarrell Quansah is the one who's the backup to Virgil in that middle role. And you could make the case, of course, that Joe Gomez can just be the backup to Ibu on the right side. But I feel like Sepp would be perfectly suited to that role as well. And then maybe Joe can be the backup on the left side. But what Joe could actually be is he could be the fourth starter. So you go Ibu, Virgil, plus new arrival. And if any of them are out, Joe Gomez is the one that comes in. And then behind them, you've got Sepp, 22 years of age, Jarrell Quansah, who'd be 21. And if he wasn't to go on loan, Luke Chambers as the backup on the left side. But even if Luke goes, you've still got Joe and the other two. So you've got more than enough bodies there. But like, we bought this kid for a reason. We paid 1.3 million, potentially rising to 4.4 million. And he played 4 games for us. 1 in the FA Cup, 3 in the League Cup in his first season, and has never gotten to play since. That's 1920. And he's never gotten to play for us since. He had the half-season loan to Preston, where he often played as a wing-back and looked quite comfortable. Then he went on loan for a full season, and he played 50 games, mostly as a centre-back in a 3. Then he had the loan to Schalke, which unfortunately he sustained a horrendous ankle injury and it ruined his season. But this season he's gone on loan to Mainz and he has been undeniably their best player. And I do wonder if he's done enough there to potentially just have the club look at it and think, let's just try and get him back. Because he's only 22, and even if we keep him for another 2 or 3 years in a squad role and he doesn't develop into a starter, he could well just develop into a player we can just sell for 8 to 10 million. You know, like, we need to get rid of Nat Phillips. We need to get rid of Reece Williams, move on these players that clearly aren't good enough. But we don't know yet if Sepp is good enough. 22 is really young for a centre-back. And he's already got a decent amount of experience under his belt. Like, he arrived with first-team experience, 23 games for Zwolle, including 22 in the Eredivisie. Like, he's played 103 games prior to this season. And I think this season he's played like 23 in all competitions. That's a decent amount of football for a 22-year-old. You compare and contrast that with Nat Phillips, and if this will pull up, Nat Phillips has played 78 games prior to his loan to Cardiff, where I think he's played 3 games so far. Nat Phillips is soon to be 27. Move Nat on, move Reece on, bring Sepp back, even if it means loaning out Luke Chambers and getting him experience. That's probably best for all. Roll into next season in a back 3 with 6 centre-backs that you can call upon and be very comfortable with. Like, you'd always be comfortable seeing Joe Gomez in the team. We're all very, very calm now when we see Jarrell Quansah's name in the team. And I honestly think Sepp Vandenberg could be another one like that for us, where you see his name and you just go, yeah, fine, absolutely. He'll be absolutely fine. He'll be 7.5, 8 out of 10. With his ball playing and with his pace, he will suit a back 3 really well. And if it's a manager like Alonso or like Amorim who work with those defenders on their ability to pass out from the back, potentially he could become a real player for us. One to keep an eye on for sure. Liverpool get huge boost as 3 players return for first team training. Alisson, Joe Gomez and Connor Bradley all back in training today. Ali and Joe obviously were sick at the weekend. Bradley obviously was dealing with the passing of his father. Ibu's obviously going to be back this weekend as well, which is another big boost after he sat out through suspension. We do still have a few injuries. Obviously, Thiago and Stefan Bajcetic are the kind of the long-term ones that might be back this season. Joel Matip obviously done for the season. Trent, Gravenberch, Salah and Szoboszlai currently on the sidelines with shorter term injuries. So we'll see when they're back. You'd imagine Trent will be a couple of weeks maybe back for the final. Don't think we'll see him against Brentford, so potentially back for the final. Gravenberch, who knows? It's a groin injury. He was fit enough to be on the bench at the weekend, but not apparently fit enough to come off the bench. I don't really understand. Salah and Szoboszlai, Jurgen had hinted that they could be ready for Brentford, so we'll wait and see. My guess is if they're okay for Brentford, they'll be on the bench and they'll get, run-outs. The view will be to have them ready for the cup final. That's the game that matters most in terms of immediate silverware. Now, obviously, we need to beat Brentford as well to stay top of the league, but that cup final, it's an opportunity to win a trophy, and that's what this club was built on. Liverpool.com, what have you got for us? Liverpool could endanger Manchester City's Champions League spot as Bayern dreams of Xabi Alonso. It's a piece about Salah, another piece about Alonso and how he might use Darwin Núñez. Another club confident of keeping manager as Liverpool handed Jurgen Klopp shortlist blow. We'll come back to that. Jurgen Klopp told he could already have Liverpool transfer solution beating Virgil van Dijk. That's another piece about Vandenberg. Paul Merson talking absolute bubbles. Another piece about Alonso. Another piece about Alonso. Piece about Jurgen. Two more pieces about Alonso. This is a lovely story. Liverpool have announced that Sven-Göran Eriksson will be involved in the Legends match on one of the managerial teams. So he will get to live out his dream of sitting in the dugout at Anfield, which I've always been a Sven fan. Words are hard. I've always been a fan. I would have loved us to have gotten him in 2004 when Houllier was going. I actually wanted us the year before to get rid of Houllier and bring in Sven because it was clear that he wasn't happy with England. I think he would have done wonders with this club, genuinely. Off the back of what he'd done at Lazio, if he could have recreated a team in that ilk, that type of midfield. I mean, Gerrard would have, Gerrard in the Nedved role would have been just ridiculous. But yeah, great that Liverpool are bringing Sven in for this, and hopefully the crowd that's there will give him a huge, huge reception. Let's see. This piece is about managers. Oh, it's Ange Postecoglou and Spurs saying that, or reports saying that Spurs are confident that he'll stay there. I saw this on Twitter yesterday, and the reaction was weird. I saw a lot of people saying, "Oh, we don't want him anyway." You have no fucking idea who we want. Nobody does. People think it's going to be Alonso because social media has said it's going to be Alonso. But these are the same people that had no idea that Jurgen Klopp had told the club he was leaving 3 months before it was announced. So I just don't understand the mindset of just dismissing, oh, we only want... No, you're just... Shush. Shush. The decision will not be made emotionally. Quite the opposite. The decision will be made analytically. People will engage their brains to make the decision. And if it turns out to be Alonso, great. Great. If he goes through that process and he's the one they decide on, brilliant. As long as that's the process. Fans should have absolutely no say in who the manager is, because the last time fans had a say, we ended up keeping Kenny and it was a disaster. If fans had had their way in 2015, we would have hired Carlo Ancelotti and not Jurgen Klopp. So how would that have worked out? People seem to think that because they've been the big cheerleaders for Jurgen over the last few years, that their previous takes have disappeared from the internet. They haven't. There's a lot of receipts out there from the 14-15 seasons we fell apart under Rodgers of prominent Liverpool supporters and writers and podcasters disparaging Jurgen Klopp, and the suggestion made by some of us that we should fire Brendan and try and get Jurgen Klopp. If you suggested that in 14-15, you were abused for it. People pointed at what was going on at Dortmund and were laughing. Oh, the Messiah, is he? Well, yeah, he fucking was. Don't think any of that's disappeared. That's all still out there. You might have hidden it well enough, but it's still out there. Anyway, on to AnfieldIndex.com. Liverpool are being linked with Alphonso Davies. Now, there is not a better option we could find for that left wing-back role under either Xabi Alonso or Ruben Amorim. I would be of the opinion that a fit and firing Alphonso Davies is the best left-back in the world, and he is a sensation going forward. There is a piece about Anfield and the role it can play in the title race. It's a piece about Sven. There's a report that Pedro Neto is a potential target, and you all know how I feel about him. There's a piece about Alonso and Jamie Carragher basically dedicating Monday Night Football to covering the Bundesliga. Podcast-wise, there is a Media Matters with Eddie Gibbs stepping in for Dave Davis, who's away on holiday, and David Lynch. I said this on Twitter last night. I'm going to say it again now. Eddie's really good at this. Really, really good at this, at leading the conversation, asking the right questions. He doesn't take nearly enough credit for how good he is as a podcaster. He is far better than most podcasters in most spheres. And more Gibbo is the order of the day. We want more Gibbo. The people demand more Gibbo. So why won't they give us what we want? Send your complaints to gags@AnfieldIndex.com. There is the new Under Pressure. Cy Brundish hosting Hamza and Phil Barter to discuss the win over Burnley. As always, an in-depth look. And then there is part 2 of our new series, The Next Dance, which is Dave Davis and myself looking at potential new Liverpool managers. And obviously episode 1 was Xabi. Episode 2 is my pick. It's Ruben Amorim, who I think is the closest thing going to Jurgen. I think he's the closest thing going to Borussia Dortmund Jurgen. Personality-wise, man management-wise, player development-wise, tactically, he ticks every box. He's a proven winner. He's on track for a second league title and potentially a 4th cup in his young career as a manager. Ticks every box for me. People say, well, we don't have an emotional connection with him like we do with Xabi. Right. Xabi left 15 years ago. He forced his way out of the club. 15 years ago. People's memory of him as a player for Liverpool doesn't line up with what we actually saw in his 5 years at the club. He was not great for us every single year. He had 1 great year, 2 good years, and 2 pretty poor years. But it's 15 years since he left. And I know that the majority of people clamouring for him are in their early 20s. meaning they were children when he left. You don't have an emotional connection with somebody. You're a child. You were 8. The thing you have an emotional connection with is your bedtime. There was no emotional connection with Jurgen Klopp before he was hired. There was no emotional connection with Rafa Benitez before he was hired. There was no emotional connection with Gerard Houllier before he was hired. You know who there was an emotional connection to? Graham Souness. Yeah, Graham Souness. Roy Evans. And I like Roy, but we didn't win. We won a League Cup. We're an FA Cup under Souness. We had emotional connections, though. We had an emotional connection with Kenny the second time. Won a League Cup. You happy with that? You happy with a League Cup or an FA Cup in 4 or 5 years? And you support a different club than I do. We had no emotional connection to Bill Shankly before he arrived. There was no real emotional connection with Bob Paisley because he was just Shankly's assistant. And he's very understated and softly spoken. Same thing goes for Joe Fagan. This idea of the emotional connection is horseshit. Horseshit. The only emotional connection we've had that's been a success was Kenny the first time around. He inherited the best team in Europe. We don't need an emotional connection to the guy before they get here. It's what they do once they get here that forges that bond. Anyway, that'll do for today. I will see you all tomorrow. No, I won't. I'll see you all Thursday. Yeah. I'll see you all Thursday. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.